Hello, everybody. Welcome to this joint webinar that we're very pleased to present. My name is Chris Finan, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at ActZero. And I'm elated today to be joined by our partner here with Zeguro, Sidd Gavirneni. He's the CEO and co-founder of Zeguro, and we're very pleased to present this joint webinar to tell you about how cybersecurity insurance can be combined with managed detection and response to achieve better overall risk management outcomes. So welcome today. Just to give you a quick rundown of what to expect, we will introduce ourselves. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the importance, of course, of proactive hardening and how this combination of cybersecurity insurance and managed detection and response can help you achieve that more effectively and efficiently. We're going to talk about how we do that as well for risk reduction. And then we're going to talk a little bit about applicability to IT and business outcomes, as well as give you an example of how it applies to a specific threat. In this case, I'll just tease it out since it's at the forefront of everybody's mind, and that is cyber extortion or ransomware. And then we'll get into a bit of a recap. We'll talk to you about our some resources that we're going to make available, and we will get into Q&A. We'll make sure we provide plenty of time to do that. Just a couple housekeeping notes. Please submit your questions as they come up, and then we will answer those at the end. We'll try to get through everything. And then if you can, if you feel like it, please rate and comment at the end of the presentation. We would very much welcome and be grateful for your feedback. So thank you for that. Now let me go over to Sidd and ask him to introduce himself.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on here. And hello, everyone. Really appreciate you joining and listening to this conversation. I'm Sidd Gavirneni, CEO and co-founder of Zeguro. I come from a cybersecurity background with about 18 years in cybersecurity and fairly new to insurance. I started getting into insurance about 3 years ago. So it's really about bringing in these two experiences together, security and insurance. And that's what we do at Zeguro, which, if you know any Spanish, seguro with an S means security or insurance. So that's who we are. And really excited to be talking about how MDR and cyber insurance can go hand in hand.
Thanks for that intro, Sidd. It's a real pleasure to get to do this with you. We've gotten to do a few warm-up chats, and everyone has been really interesting. So I'm looking forward to this one today. My name is Chris Finan. As I mentioned, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at ActZero. We are a managed detection and response cybersecurity provider. And what MDR means is really just trying to come in and provide a turnkey solution to provide holistic security, which helps with proactively hardening environments, reducing that attack surface, as well as providing real-time detection and immediate response, as well as more advanced incident response to help prevent bad outcomes and make sure that we're staying ahead of the adversary. So we're working with clients across the US and Canada to deliver those services. And what's so great about this partnership is now we can be even more comprehensive. We can come in and help a company not just proactively reduce their risk, mitigate those attack risks and impacts if the adversary were effective, but then also all the way through the life cycle, help with risk transfer as well. So very pleased to get a chance to talk about that today. So with that, we'll go back to the slides and we'll dive right in.
Sounds good.
And the first thing we're going to talk about is Preincident and how this combination of cybersecurity insurance and MDR, managed detection and response, can help companies or organizations with their proactive hardening. We want to try to reduce that attack surface to make it more defensible. And one way to think about this in terms of the threat timeline is all of the activities that happen left of boom, if you will, or pre-incident. And so Sidd, let me ask you, if you don't mind, we'd love to hear about how Zeguro helps organizations to do that, to do that type of proactive hardening left of boom.
Yeah, and Chris, I applaud your team for coming up with the terminology boom. Right? It truly is a boom. Something unexpected that happens for these most businesses who get breached. Right? And the way that we look at it at Zeguro is the idea of people, processes, and technology. Looking at it holistically, because security cannot be independent of each other. You need to be able to look at how employees are behaving, what processes the business has in place to better manage the risks or address those risks. And also continuous monitoring and understanding of the vulnerabilities so the business can take action. And these are three of the components that we do. So for example, within the Zeguro platform, or the cyber safety solution, as we call it, any business can get all of their IT best practice policies and security policies. We recommend the business as to what they should do, right, based on industry best practices. So for example, using multi-factor authentication. And all of these policies become a good audit trail for when a business needs to be compliant with, let's say, PCI DSS or HIPAA regulations. But in addition to that, we also go beyond and try and understand the cybersecurity knowledge and skill set of every employee, because people are the primary root cause of breaches. It's not because they want to be malicious. It's just that most people don't know how to secure business assets and resources in the digital world. And then we provide continuous training to help decrease those risks. And then we also run continuous vulnerability scans of all of their websites and web apps to help them understand what the risks are and tell them how to decrease those risks. So these are some of the things that we do left of the boom before a breach happens.
One of the things that I know we've chatted about before, Sidd, that I love about this partnership is how we both sort of independently have come to this conclusion of these three dimensions, right? People, process, and technology, and have really focused our service offering in helping organizations address those three dimensions, throughout the life cycle, of course, but especially during this, proactive hardening phase.
Yes.
We have a very similar approach. We do what we call a maturity model assessment. Our maturity model is really our codex, if you will, our Rosetta Stone that we have, we use to map against several different threat scenarios, including ransomware and cloud ATO, as well as compliance frameworks such as CIS, CMMC, et cetera. And we assess organizations who come to us during, pre-sales, right, during that early engagement phase, or they can do their own self-assessment over our website. But that really helps us understand them and their needs. It really then allows us to have a conversation with them about how we might be able to continuously help them, improve their maturity and address any gaps that they may have. They may also want to go and try to build that themselves or partner with somebody else. But we try to have a conversation that's really about them and their needs and their drivers, and really contextualize it across those dimensions of threat or compliance outcomes that they're focused on. And, interesting, we also map a lot of our detection and response against those outcomes as well. And so, post incident, we can similarly continuously assess and understand the risks in that context of outcomes as it relates to the threat or compliance. And we just think that's a very useful way to help a company continuously assess, continuously measure, their risks and their attack surface, so that we're always working together, almost like a trainer at the gym, to help that organization get better and be more prepared to handle, these risks, to drive them down, and to, of course, mitigate the impact in the next phase, which is, the right of boom phase, right? Which is when an incident does happen, and we know, of course, with a determined adversary in this day and age, sometimes those incidents do happen, even with the best proactive strategies for risk management. So I would love to hear, Sidd, if you wouldn't mind, how do you then help organizations in that right of boom phase? What are some of the things that you do?
Yes, so most people don't think about this. Right? When you think about cybersecurity, it's all about, or most companies think about, okay, what all do we need to do to reduce our risk? How can we not get breached? But breaches happen. I mean, these malicious actors can be more advanced than the best entrepreneurs in the world, or the best security experts in the world. So breaches will happen, and that is where it is really important for businesses to be prepared for that. And to help them with this, we provide cyber insurance. Right? So many people don't even know what cyber insurance is all about. And if you're a big company, yes, you might have resources to deal with a breach, right? Let's say that you have a ransomware attack and you have $100 million sitting in your bank account, then sure, you have some ability to pay $2 million in ransom. But if you're a smaller company, you don't have that luxury. And that's where insurance comes into play. Insurance really helps provide for any income losses, right? So if your business is down, then insurance helps you with that, or any legal costs. So it's really bringing in all the right tools and resources to help the business get back on their feet. And that's where it's really great to be working with ActZero because you provide a big piece of that recovery.
And ideally even prevent that scenario, of course, in the first place. Exactly. One of the things that we think about similarly is speed is the key, right? So, and for us as well, it really starts with that data, the same data that we're using to assess by continuously looking at that for indicators of compromise. Ideally, right at boom, we're able to contain something, right? Or we're even able to see those early indicators of compromise and prevent boom in the first place, or contain that blast radius very quickly before it causes business interruption or disruption or data compromise. So we invest a lot in speed of detection, speed of response to prevent contagion, if you will. But then, of course, if and when these things happen, or if somebody comes to us after an incident, working with them to very quickly work through that incident response, having a plan, making sure that they've exercised it, making sure that they've got cyber insurance and are prepared to handle these scenarios. So again, the more that we can help and work on this together up front, the more quickly, not just can we make the response, but we can make the recovery all the way through the life cycle of an event to the return of restoration and normal business operations. We want to make that happen as quickly as possible. That's really the key.
Exactly, because this is not like a car accident where you get into a car accident. If you don't have a car, you go rent a car, but you cannot rent a business and make it your own.
That's a great analogy. Well, I'd like to take a minute and really drill down even further into the guidance that we're providing. And again, thinking about it in terms of people, process, and technology. Sidd, how do you help your clients with security guidance? Can you give us a sense of that?
Yes. So as I was mentioning earlier, with respect to making sure that everyone is educated. The biggest challenge with security is knowledge. Most people have no idea what to do with cybersecurity. And so they just end up putting their head in the sand. And that's just because they don't know. Even if a business has, even if it's a tech company with a CTO, the skill set of a CTO is completely different from the skill set of a security professional. So we always start with the basics of education, the ability to convey to employees, to everyone at the company, everything they need to know about cybersecurity. So for example, if we see that Chris, you're weak when it comes to managing passwords, right? Which I hope you're not, and I'm sure you're not. And if we see that I'm weak when it comes to using public Wi-Fi's, then you get trained in that first in your password management skills, and I get trained in the use of public Wi-Fi's first. So the goal here is to address the most critical risks first versus the same cookie cutter training to every employee each month. And similarly, looking at all of the vulnerabilities that we see on the technology side and telling the business exactly how to fix those. And that's one of the aspects of how we approach cybersecurity for these smaller businesses.
I love what you said about prioritizing for impact. These IT teams very often are small, especially in the SME space. Excuse me. You may well encounter an IT team of one or two, and of course we see all the way up, on the higher side, maybe IT security teams of 20. But especially in those scenarios where you've got very few people who are having to cover a lot of ground, helping them to prioritize for impact, I think is just so critical. So anytime I think you can provide that level of really tailored guidance of helping them identify those opportunities for the highest value investments in training or custom remediation and hardening, I think that's where you can really begin to move the risk mitigation needle very quickly for these organizations. The way that we do it is we've got two different types of service offerings that we're really helping to deliver and make our service more consumable or more easily consumable, particularly for those small teams. We've got our virtual CISO offering. We've also got what we call our guide service, which is really tailored to do this, and that is provide that custom hardening and remediation advice to really drive prioritization and impact. And as I said, these are really valuable for those organizations without the resident expertise or the capacity to really improve their security maturity on their own, or they might just want somebody to help augment them and help them accelerate some of those investments. Sometimes the drivers are security outcomes. Sometimes they're based on those compliance frameworks, trying to simplify that and reduce down the burden of some of that reporting. But we try to really focus on those foundational investments or controls that we can help them put in place or monitor that help them address both types of both security and compliance outcomes, and do that in the highest possible priority month over month, and continually assess and measure. I think again that's one of the things that I really like about how you think about this is that you can't manage what you don't measure. So helping organizations continuously do that and get better and better at it over time.
Yes. And Chris, that's a really good point about compliance and security. And I would like to caution everyone that these two things might not necessarily be the same. You might be compliant with a specific regulation, but you might not be fully secure, and vice versa. So it's really important to look at these two things individually, but also together.
Well, I think this is the perfect segue, and I'll talk about risk reduction. And I'm going to just drop the slides so that we can interact a little bit more as we talk about this. So just give me 1 second. There we go. And as we move into risk reduction, Sidd, how can an organization reduce their risk over time?
There's so many things, right? When you think about the whole cybersecurity space, there's quite a few tools. There's so many things that a business can do, and every single data point makes a difference. We cannot say that there's one specific thing that a business can do and be protected forever, right? If that's the case, then whoever invented this piece of technology would be ruling the world. Right? So the way that we think about cyber risk is looking at all of the various data points that exist in the landscape of that business, including processes and people, employee behavior. And it's about connecting all of those dots to understand where the key risks are. And that's what we do for insurance as well. It's really looking at each one of these different risks, connecting all of those dots, understanding what the primary root causes for breaches could be, and using that for underwriting insurance. So what that enables us to do is tell the business exactly what they can implement or what they can do to lower the insurance premiums. Because at the end, for businesses, there are two key drivers when it comes to cybersecurity. One is not having a breach. Two is saving money. And that's how we approach it, telling them how to decrease that risk using parts of our platform, but using that data to lower insurance premiums if they're being secure.
So much of this is about connecting the dots, and the more that you can do that, and the more quickly you can do that, and find the right data, find the right signal. That's a lot of how we think about this. Yes. It's so critical to achieving these outcomes, and of course staying ahead of determined adversaries. For us, yes, it's so much is about collecting, fusing, analyzing data across the customer's environment or organization's environment. We try to use a combination of machines to do that and continuously invest, and humans on the loop. And we find that combination, you don't only want the Iron Man suit, you also want Tony Stark. You got to have both. And when you have both, that's when there's this real magic where you can use the very best of what a machine can do at machine speed and a human analyst. And, for us, so much of the focus is on really using the machines to enable the human analyst and make them that much more powerful. And, again, speed is the key. So internally, we focus a lot on, can we connect those dots at speed, and can we do so to really drive better and better outcomes over time? And the more we understand a customer's environment and what constitutes normal across their environment, normal behaviors, the better that we get at identifying changes in that behavior that might indicate, a higher risk level. So yes, I love that concept of connecting dots.
Yeah, and that's why this partnership is so great, because your connecting the dots also helps us lower the premiums for our customers.
Exactly. I love that, and reducing risk over time. Again, like that gym, we get stronger the more we get to partner, and the longer we get to partner with these organizations. I'd love to shift us now, Sidd, into applicability, and I'll just bring the slides back up. Let's talk for a minute about the relevance of all this, and try to bring it home for our IT and business stakeholders. Of course, such a need to, at the end of the day, not just deliver a service, but really help them drive, material outcomes. I know we've chatted about this previously, the importance of really simplicity and delivering on those outcomes. For us, and I think, again, this is something that we share in common in how we approach and begin these conversations, by identifying those key drivers, understanding those necessary outcomes, whether they are simply security, whether they're security and compliance driven, or, just overall business needs of preventing interruption and ensuring continuity. And then, of course, continuously measuring and repeating. I'd love to hear how you think about this, how you think about it when you go and you talk to those senior IT or business leaders. How do you understand and help them understand what you can deliver?
Mm-hmm. So one thing that we know is that at large organizations, they have risk managers whose job is to understand the overall risk and figure out how to decrease that risk. But smaller companies don't have that role. They don't have that skill set, or they don't necessarily have that skill set. So that's how we approach it, as looking at that holistic risk management and giving them insights into how each and every piece is important, like understanding that risk, decreasing that risk, and transferring that risk. But at the same time, one of the points here is lowering the price of that, or decreasing the cost, both from a personal perspective, but also from a cash standpoint, and helping them understand as to how this holistic risk management is what will be beneficial for them over the short term and the long term.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, where the real magic can happen is over time, as an organization gets better and better, and we get better working with them and understanding their data, reducing in terms of time, risk, money, and human resources at the problem, and just finding those efficiencies by working with them over time.
Yes,
the more we can shrink that attack surface, the easier it is to defend and to maintain.
Yeah, it's very similar to getting fire insurance, right? I mean, every house, every business has a fire hydrant or fire extinguisher, but it does not mean that the business does not need to have insurance against a fire. It's really looking at each and every piece, but from the perspective of cyber.
But I'd love to bring this home with an example. Probably one of maybe several, but certainly one at the forefront of everyone's mind. Might be keeping them up at night.
Yes.
So let's contextualize this in terms of ransomware protection in particular. And I think what we've recognized is prevention alone isn't always sufficient, given the tremendous tooling and services available to the ransomware criminal community today. So I think one of the really interesting case studies here is how we can, with this comprehensive approach, help an organization really drive down the risk of a material impact of one of these ransomware events over time.
Yes. And that's every piece of it. If we go back to the people, process, and technology side of things, right? One, business should have the right processes in place to make sure that if a ransomware attack happens, how can they recover, right? What's their incident response policy? But then on the people side, it's helping people be better aware of what not to do so they can avoid these attacks, like not clicking on phishing links. I mean, everyone knows that they shouldn't, but we are always surprised as to how many people still do. And then the technology aspect, which you guys bring in very well to help understand, detect, and decrease that risk as well.
Exactly. Yeah, we focus on this a lot. It is the primary security scenario that we've mapped, as I mentioned previously in our maturity model. We try to identify and help organizations really prioritize. We have identified, for example, just for ransomware, 137 key controls that we assess continuously and monitor to look for gaps, look for and monitor against potential control failures. That's something in particular that we just find, of course, is at the forefront of every IT and risk management leader's mind today. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing for impact and good outcomes to prevent cyber extortion in particular. Well, Sidd, let's bring this home and talk about what people can do. So with that, we'll just get into our recap here. Maybe you could lead us off here and talk a little bit about some of these key takeaways.
Yeah, I think at the end, it really is about how we can make it easy and approachable for any business to be secure and to be able to recover quickly, get back on their feet if and when there's a breach. And this is where our partnership comes into play, is looking at different aspects of that whole spectrum, of that whole life cycle of being secure and reducing the risk. So definitely all of the process side of things, like the policy templates or any compliance related aspects, the way that you guys handle it, making sure that people are educated, that they know what to do. And that, I keep going back to that, is one of the most important aspects to help decrease risk. And then from our perspective, at the end, it's all about making sure that you have that safety net, which is cyber insurance.
Exactly right. And, the good news is there are lots of steps that you can take today. The good news is a lot of what we're talking about and the way that we bring it all together, none of it's really magic, right? A lot of it is rooted in sound procedures, best practices, documentation and smart templates, measuring and understanding risks. Some of this you can implement yourself, and implementing these best practices, such as assessing risks, continuously measuring them, are going to enable this approach and make it easier to partner with organizations like ours. And of course, it's going to be valuable whether or not you decide to build or partner with organizations like ours to facilitate this comprehensive risk management strategy. So to that end, we've made available some resources here in the webinar. You can get those in the BrightTalk resources tab. And Sidd, you want to just talk about some of the resources that are available from Zeguro?
Yep, definitely. A couple of them, the key ones would be the 101 on cybersecurity, right? The biggest piece of advice that we give is do not ignore cybersecurity. So learn the basics, whatever you need to do to get started. And then the other piece is cyber insurance itself. And it is complex. It's a legal document, a cyber insurance policy. So this ebook will better help you understand what you should look for in cyber insurance and why you need it and everything that it covers.
Terrific. Yeah, and we've posted two assets here. The first is our incident response template. This is what we use as part of our vCISO and guide service to help organizations create that template, that incident response plan that's going to really work for them within their context. So it's the starting point for your own IR plan. There are lots of examples in there for notifications, as I mentioned, how to measure, which is so important, how to test and exercise to make sure that you're always prepared. And then the other asset is a white paper on testing and validating the maturity of your security programs. A lot of this is just looking at and making sure you're constantly reassessing your attitudes towards security. It's got some concrete tool-less defense mechanisms, so you can use best practices to implement a lot of this. So we've made those all available in the resources section here under BrightTalk, and please take advantage and reach out to us if you've got any questions. So speaking of questions, with that, we're going to wrap up our talking, the aspect here of the webinar, and we'll move into Q&A. So with that, let me end the presentation, and we will get right into the Q&A section.
Great. So looks like the first question is, what does cyber insurance usually cover? Yep, good question. I mean, being new to the insurance space, I always was confused about it as well. So a valid question. And it does cover a lot more than what you would ever expect or think that it would. So for example, if you have any kind of a breach, so let's say that you lose customer data, if it's SSNs, then any cost related to notifying your customers, any fines that you need to pay to regulatory bodies, bringing in the legal resources, bringing in breach response teams or the forensics teams to help you understand what happened, to stop the bleeding, to help you recover from that. Let's say that you have a ransomware attack, then negotiating with the malicious actors, paying for the ransom if need be, helping you recover that data, stopping the bleeding, and anything you can think of in that role. But quite a few insurance policies also pay for any post-remediation aspects or bringing in new security tools and services to help you be secure. So for a few $1,000s for a small company, it is extremely important and useful to have that. More insurance. Okay, does insurance cover past incidents? Yes and no. So if it is a known breach, so if you as a business, you are already aware of that breach and then you go and get insurance, then no. It's like being in a car accident and then going to an insurance company saying, well, I had an accident yesterday. Can I get insurance from you so you can pay for that? So that doesn't work. However, if you were not aware of any breaches and you get insurance, and during the lifetime of your policy, you realize that there was a breach and there was an incident, then yes, the insurance will cover for that. Not every company does that. It depends on the policy itself. Again, it's such a long legal document, so make sure that you read through it.
Okay, let's see. We have another question. You said previously that tech was insufficient. What role does it play now? Yeah, interesting. Good question. So I think I alluded to this earlier, and I think the key in the way to think about it is tech is an enabler. We feel very strongly about that as a company. We invest an enormous amount in our tech stack. We've got our R&D team is almost half of our overall organization size, which is pretty unique for a service provider like ours. But even with all of that tremendous investment in tech, it is an enabler. It is an enabler of our analysis and our human element of the service, because at the end of the day, tech alone is indeed insufficient. It can help you, identify signal from noise. It can help human analysts operate much more quickly, but at the end of the day, it's still, and even tech can take automated response actions, which may be critical for fast-moving threats. So we want to enable all of that with technology. But at the end of the day, it still takes people making decisions. These are very ambiguous environments. The adversaries try to take advantage of that ambiguity to hide their actions and activities. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, it is tech enabling smart human analysis and response actions. And we want to make that loop very, very quick in the way that it works. And it is continuously looping through human analyst actions that an organization may be taking, addressing and adjusting policies and protocols smartly as needed, whether it's a software restriction policy that we're working with an organization to implement, whether it is changes to an organization's environment or configurations. But we want that loop to be happening very, very rapidly and quickly, and continuously cycling between machine, human, and process. And the tighter that we have that feedback loop, the better, and the more we'll be able to react to changes in adversary behavior and tooling. The adversary gets a vote. That's one of the things that's very unique. So we want to be constantly improving through that loop.
Right. Well, I'm assuming this is related to insurance. What types of incidents are covered? Any incident that's because of a cyber attack, right? So name it, and it is covered by cyber insurance. One caveat here is that if it is a malicious insider, who has led to an intentional breach, then that usually is part of a crime insurance policy versus a cyber insurance policy. So there are some nuances here that you should be aware of, but if it is by a malicious outside actor, then it will be covered. Does insurance cover dark web searches as well? Now, I think the question, I'll answer the question the way that I understand it. So as part of how we underwrite insurance, we do look at information from the dark web, right, to better understand what the risk for the business is. And that plays a role in the insurance premiums. If that is what you're referring to, then yes. However, if there is a breach and that information is out in the dark web, once you have your insurance policy, then yes, that will be covered as part of the insurance policy. I hope I answered that right, if I could understand it that way.
Okay, it looks like that's all the questions that we have time for today. And we're at the end. Sidd, it was a real pleasure getting to talk about this with you.
Yes, and looking forward to more such conversations and helping anyone who needs any more insight and information on insurance and what we do.
Yep, there's resources here to get in touch with us. Please do if we can help you. And please give us a rating here and some feedback. We'd appreciate any comments or suggestions that you may have. So thank you for spending a little time with us today. It was a pleasure, and we hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.